it was so intense with all these issues of all these babies. And it was like, yes, we could be upset over what's going on with ours, or we could just be really grateful that like it's not worse than this. Hey everyone, I'm Laura.
I'm Kristen.
And this is Souls in Blue. Whoa, I messed that up. Souls in Blue, where Kristen and I have open, candid conversations in hope of inspiring your personal growth and ours as well. And today it's kind of a little different because we're not doing the advice thing. We're not doing like, well, I guess we are kind of covering a subject here. We wanted to talk about shifting our perspective, but more specifically, experiences that we've both had recently that shifted our perspective about our various situations. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just wanted to have a conversation about it, talk about it. And yeah. So first up is me talking about the birthing experience. So if you guys don't know, I had my baby at the end of April, and he was almost 3 weeks early. It was about 2.5 weeks early. And he had some issues when he was born. So I'll go over that, the birth story, if you guys want to hear it. And if not, feel free to skip ahead because I know that's not everybody's cup of tea. But yeah, so should I just go?
Dive in.
Just go for it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual birth experience because I know some people really like wanted to hear what actually happened. So I will try to not be too gory and gross about it, but here comes the details. So So I'm obviously not sharing, well maybe it's not obvious, but I'm not sharing my baby's like full name on the internet for privacy reasons, but his nickname is Finn. And Finn was scheduled to be delivered at 39 weeks because I have big babies. I've had 3 other C-sections, so he was a planned C-section. And so what happened instead, I was having like false labor for weeks. And I'm so sorry, Kristen, because she already heard the part of the story anyway.
Okay.
I was having false labor for weeks. So basically, in a nutshell, my uterus was like having contractions, but they weren't doing anything. They were just happening. And this had been going on and off for like 4 weeks, I think, like just here and there, where I would start having contractions, but they weren't like consistent. They were like 10 minutes, 5 minutes apart, 6 minutes apart, 16 minutes apart, 5 minutes apart, 8 minutes apart, like not like a pattern. It was just kind of all over the place. And they were happening throughout the day, but like a lot at night. And then if I laid down and went to sleep, they kind of fizzled out and then it was nothing in the morning. So fast forward to the day I went into labor, it was like the evening and they were happening again. And I started timing them, even though I told myself I wasn't going to time them anymore because I was like, this has happened so many times that like I might as well just not time them. But I noticed that they were happening a lot, and I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to time these freaking contractions. And they started coming like consistent. It was like 6 minutes, 5 minutes and 45 seconds apart, like over and over again. And then it was 5.5 minutes apart over and over again. And at that point in time, I had been timing them for like over an hour. And they were consistent. And Troy comes in and he's like, how's those contractions going? And I was like, I think this is it this time. And I was like, if this one comes in the next 10 seconds, we'll know. I'm watching my clock to like watch it get down to like 5.5 minutes. And sure enough, it was like 5 minutes and 38 seconds. And all of a sudden I felt a contraction coming on again. I was like, I guess this is it. And so I started calling the troops, calling my mom, calling my mother-in-law to come like help the kids so that we could go to the hospital. And so they came. Well, my mom lives 2 hours away. So my mother-in-law lives closer. My mom's the one who's like in charge of watching the kids overnight and stuff. So my mother-in-law came to like just house sit and watch the kids until my mom could get there. And this is probably at like 10 o'clock or so that this was going on. So we told the kids, like, the baby's coming probably tonight. Like, not for certain, but like, we're pretty sure he's coming. And, we just let them know. So, and then we head off to the hospital. And we get there, and I was sitting in the parking lot, like, talking to Troy. I was like, I don't know, babe, like, what if this is just false labor again? And I was afraid to go into the hospital because you know how it is with hospitals. It's like once you go in there, you're getting the barrage of testing, you're getting the like people don't want you to leave until they figure it out, and da, da, da. So it was like as soon as I walk through those doors, like I'm committed to being here for a bit. And even if it's nothing, like I don't want them to try to have this baby early if he's not ready and like my body's not actually in labor. All these things were running through my head. So we sat in the car. Actually, this was on the way to the hospital. I was saying this, and he said, let's just get there and we'll figure it out. Like, it's just a car ride. Like, once we get in the parking lot, we'll like see where things are at. I was like, okay. So that's when we got there. I expressed all these concerns to him. And then I was getting like the contractions were still coming. And I was like, all right, let's just go. We like said a little prayer in the car. And then we went in and waited for them to, it was after hours. So like we had to wait for security to come let us in. And like in the meantime, these contractions were just like, oh, and I swear every time I get a contraction, I have to friggin' pee, which was really annoying. Because it's just like pressing down on everything. And so we get into triage. They hooked me up to the monitors. I had to like, put on the gown and all that stuff. And then just like lay in bed and be monitored. They checked my blood pressure. Everything was good there. And yeah. And so I was just laying in bed, having contractions every now and again, asking like I swear it must've been like every third or fourth contraction to be taken off the monitor so I could go pee. So, like the whole freaking time. It was really annoying. So then after like an hour or so, they come back in and they say like, everything looks okay, except the baby's having like, they call them D cells. It's basically like during contractions, the baby's heart decels, which is like decelerates. So usually during contractions, it's supposed to like accelerate a little bit because it's like a little strain on their body and like, okay. So if it's decelling, it can indicate an issue, like an issue with the cord or like whatever. Something's getting like squeezed and they're not getting enough oxygen during contractions. It can be a big deal. He had 2 episodes of it during the entire time. And they said like, it's not nothing, but it's not necessarily something. So the doctor came in, she talked to me, the doctor that was on call that night. And she said, like, I'd like you to stay just another hour for monitoring. Like, I'm not sending you home. Like, I don't want you to go home yet, but like, we're not necessarily going to deliver if he's not ready yet. Cause you're still a little early. Like technically 37 weeks is term, but it's considered early term. And so, we're kind of just like, because by this point it was like past midnight. I was just like, all right, fine. Like I want to do what's best for the baby, obviously. So, okay, if another hour monitoring, what does that hurt? So probably like 15 minutes later, I get this contraction. And mind you, by the way, the contractions are getting more intense. So already in my head, I'm like, I know I'm in labor. The question is just like, when are they going to call it to like put me in to get the C-section? Because they said if I went into labor earlier than my C-section date, they would just do the surgery then. And so as I'm laying there, it was like 15 minutes after that conversation with the doctor, and I get this like super intense contraction, and I'm like gripping the side of the bed. I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna pee the bed. This is what I told Troy. Troy goes, just let it go, babe. And it's like, no, I'm not gonna sit here and pee in the triage bed. So I'm just like, oh, like bearing down so I don't pee on the bed. It's like, and as soon as it's done, I like boop hit the triage nurse bell, and I'm like, I really have to go to the bathroom again. She's like, all right. So she comes in. I was like, I didn't want to be a nuisance. This is like my big fear. Nurses love me, by the way, because I'm like, I never call them for anything if I can do it or have someone else do it. I just like, I don't like to bug the nurses. So I felt really bad that I was bugging her every freaking 15 minutes to unhook me. So she comes in and she unhooks me. And I'm like, all right, I have to go to the bathroom so bad. So I start waddling to the bathroom, which is like around the corner. It's like 20 feet from the room. And I'm almost to the bathroom, and just all of a sudden, there goes my water. My water just breaks right there on the floor. And I'm just like, excuse me? She's like, yeah. I said, I think my water just broke. She's like, oh, okay. So she comes over and she, she says we have to test the water. Let's like make sure it's amniotic fluid and not just like I peed myself, which is fair. And so they just have like little strips that change colors if it's if it's amniotic fluid. And she tested it and it was, it was that. She's like, well, I said, I guess that calls it, huh? And she goes, that calls it. So I said, well, I still have to go to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, more gross things that I won't get into. And, and she said, it's going to things are going to rally pretty quick after this. I said, okay. So I just try to clean myself up as much as possible. But man, that water breaking, I've had it break before, but it was different. Or it was a single gush, and then this is where the TMI comes in. Sorry, everybody. Skip ahead if you don't want to hear it. It's more of a trickle. This happens to people, right? The initial gush was there, but then it was a trickle. This was where the hell is all this fluid coming from? It was nonstop. It was disgusting. It was a nasty experience. I did not like it. And then also the contractions start getting a little more intense after you don't have that cushion of all that water in there anymore. Water. And so, that was unpleasant from that point, waiting to go into surgery. But it did happen pretty quick. And I think I was in the operating room probably within 30 minutes of my water breaking. I was in there getting prepped for surgery. So I had to get a spinal block. I guess if you're laboring first, they do an epidural usually for pain relief. And then you do the, whatever through that. If you're just getting the surgery, it's a spinal block. And that stung a little bit, but it was fine. But my big problem was I was shaking tremendously. Oh my gosh. My whole upper body was like I was freezing cold. I was chattering. And I found out later that apparently they turned the operating room temperature up to accommodate me because I was freezing my ass off. But Troy was it was hot as balls in there. It was so hot. I was just sitting there chattering and the whole time. He was it was so hot in there. So anyway, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They start the surgery and they get the baby out and he doesn't cry right away. And evidently he had inhaled a little bit of amniotic fluid. And so they kind of sucked him out and they gave him a little bit of a CPAP machine on his face. And then they got him to cry. So he was crying after that. It was a bit tense there for a minute, but then he was crying and everything seemed so far so good. So Troy went and joined the baby. Oh no, he sat with me for a little bit. They were kind of tending to the baby, trying to get him good to go. And they were stitching me up. Well, during this entire process, which I know sounds very quick because of the way I just described it, but it was a while. And it turned out that I had a bunch of adhesions from my previous C-section, which is when scars adhere to parts of your body, your organs basically. And so mine were substantial and in the way. And so they were trying to operate around adhesions and pulling scar tissue away from, I guess, my uterus or something. And the whole point of this is that they did not give me enough spinal block to accommodate for this situation. So my spinal block started wearing off. So at the end of surgery, I was starting to feel things feeling getting stitched up, feeling getting pulled around. And I'm just sitting there, trying to, I don't know, grin and bear it once again. And the anesthesiologist was at my head every 5 minutes. He must have offered this 13 times. He was like, you sure you don't want something to just put you to sleep, but just put you in a little sleep. You wake up, you'll be in recovery. It'll be great. And I'm just no, because in my head, I didn't want to be all loopy and spaced out when to meet the baby after I get out of surgery. Because they brought him up next to my head and that was a sweet moment. He was next to my cheek because I couldn't hold him because I was so shaky, but they put him cheek to cheek and I just had my hand on him and was just holding him like that for a little bit. And that was nice, but I've had it before where I've fallen asleep and been knocked out during surgery. And then when I wake up, I'm just and I didn't want the experience. I'm no, I was telling you, he offered so many times to put me under and I'm just no, just go quickly.
Just hurry
up. Yeah. Tell her to speed it up down there. But so I made it through that. They did give me some sort of something in my IV, a pain med, but no, he really wanted to knock me out. I was just just hurry up. So that was unpleasant, but eventually that was over and I went to recovery and they brought the baby to me and I got to hang out with the baby for a bit and that was nice. And so everything seemed hunky-dory until like the next morning. I mean, I guess it was morning. So he was born like just shy of 3 a.m. And it was before noon, I believe, that I was with him in bed, like in my bed. I just had him like in my arm in my bed. And my nurse comes over and she looks at him and she's like, he's looking a little blue. I was like, is he? And I feel so horrible that like this is not a thing I noticed, but I didn't. He just looked like a sleeping baby to me, but apparently he was kind of starting to change color a little bit, enough to alarm her. So she like scoops him up out of bed and pats him on the back to try to wake him up, and he starts crying and like gets his color back and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't. Like, to be fair, I hadn't slept yet at this point, for the record. It was a long time before I slept again. So I just was not, I don't know. I guess I didn't notice, or like, I don't know. He didn't look weird to me, but she definitely noticed a difference in his color.
Mm-hmm.
That he looked dusky, quote unquote. And then he had like another episode of it. So she was like, can we take him for observation in the NICU? Well, they don't have like a real NICU, it's the nursery, but they have like a low level amount of like stuff they can do there. But anything major, you have to go to the bigger hospital. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't want to, like, obviously, yes, please observe him if you think something's going on. And so it turned out that he was actually having breathing issues with his oxygen level would like spontaneously drop. And like, he couldn't really bring himself out of it. He would have to either have someone pat on him, or like what they ended up doing was they put him under oxygen. Let me see. This is like, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know if I want to show this picture or not. But he was under, I'll show you later, but maybe not the internet. He was under what we call the space helmet. It was like an oxygen hood, because the NICU there doesn't have, I always script the name, the cannula. Is that how you say it? The nose guy.
No idea.
Someone's going to roast me on this if I'm saying it wrong, but the nose of the oxygen is. They don't have that there at this NICU. They only had the whole facial thing. So it was like a plastic hood, and he had to lay there in the bed with this thing over his head, and I wasn't allowed to pick him up. And it was like, it was rough. And there were some times where they'd take him off and we'd like trial him, but he would like, his oxygen would drop. Like after a few minutes, it would drop, and then he'd have to go back on the oxygen. So we did that song and dance for 2 days in the nursery. And then on that second day, the doctor was like, I'm calling it. Like, he has to go to the other NICU because I don't know what's wrong. He can't hold his oxygen. It's not like a ton that he needed to get him there, but it was enough that like he felt something was up that they weren't able to manage at this hospital. So then everything was crazy. I was losing it because 1, I was sleep deprived, and 2, like hormones, but 3, like obviously there's something wrong with the baby. So like, yes, obviously I'm going to freak out.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, Troy was having this like work crisis because everybody at work was on vacation that week. They're like, surely this baby won't come this week. Yeah. So they scheduled it for this week, my 37th week or whatever, because it was like 2 weeks out from when I was actually supposed to have him. And like shit hit the fan every which way. So it was just like a lot going on. But so he came to the hospital, and the like NICU team or whoever, I don't even know who transports the actual baby, but people came to transport him in this like, it just reminded me of a giant pizza oven is all I could think of. Just like this big insulated pizza oven. They put Finn in there, all hooked up to the oxygen and everything. And like watching strangers leave with my baby was like, oh, really hard. But
yeah.
Anywho, so now for C-sections, standard hospital time is 3 days. That's like pretty standard. They keep you in their care for 3 days, but you can have up to 4 days. This is day 2. I'm like, I'm leaving. Like, my baby's out of here. I'm going to go follow him. So I discharged myself early from the hospital. And this is like at nighttime. I couldn't get my prescription filled they gave me like it wasn't Percocet, oxycodone or something.
Mm-hmm.
They gave me a prescription for that, and then prescription for ibuprofen and acetaminophen. And it was nighttime. Like there's no place I can go to get this stuff at this point in time. So we discharged ourselves from the hospital, went directly to the Walgreens. I just had Troy run in and grab me Advil and Tylenol and come back out. And we headed to the hospital. So all the hardcore pain meds were off the table. I was just winging it from there. So we go to the hospital, and that was intense. It was not a fun experience by any stretch of the imagination. But this is where this whole perspective shift thing starts, because we get to the hospital, and they were already doing like lab work like immediately before we even got there. They were running blood tests. They were checking him for any infections. They were signed up for an x-ray. They hadn't done the x-ray. The x-ray they did on his chest, like they did one at the other hospital. They did a second one while we were there. And the first doctor we meet says, like, I know he's term, but he's early term. Mm-hmm. And from the looks of it, his lungs look like a premature baby's lungs. Like you can see there's like nodes in here and blah, blah, blah. Like she was explaining to me, and she said, it just seems like his lungs are just slightly underdeveloped. And that would be my guess. But we're going to run these labs, because the other thing is apparently babies can have like mini seizures that like their seizure activity will look different than like an adult, where it, like for them, they'll just kind of like shut everything down for a minute while they're having their seizure. And so they're afraid that he might be having seizures. So that was scary.
Yeah.
So they put him on all these like electrodes on his head to like monitor his brain activity while he's having these episodes of the oxygen dropping, or the desats, they called them, desaturation. And so he was monitored during a few of those. And now, mind you, this is like overnight into the next day that they're monitoring him and all this stuff. And in the meantime, we couldn't stay. They said parents aren't allowed to stay at the NICU. So we had to leave him there. And we could stay as long as we wanted, but we don't have any place to sleep. So if we start falling asleep there, we get kicked out. So I'm like, all right, let's like make sure he's okay. We'll go home and sleep, because we only lived 25 minutes from the hospital. And then, come back in the morning. So that's what we did. And we came back, and after, like, he had an x-ray on his brain too, or not x-ray, ultrasound on his brain, x-ray on his chest, the EKG, or not EKG, EEG, I guess it is. I don't know, all these things. And everything was coming back normal, which was a relief. Yeah. But then it's like, but why is he still having issues? So after a full another day, he was having like gradually less and less of these episodes. And so on the fourth day, they decided to take him off oxygen entirely and see how he did. And he did fine. And the fifth day was just like, okay, we need to make sure that he keeps not having issues, because we don't want to send him home still having issues. We need to make sure he's like good to go. And so through those, additional 2 days, he was fine. He had no more episodes, and we were allowed to take him home. So, so we got him home, and everything's been fine since. But yeah, so going back to the perspective change, it was like, it felt so intense at the time going through everything. And it's upsetting, like thinking about all the things that happened, but being there. And so for those that don't know, I live near Charlottesville, Virginia, which is like Central Virginia. UVA Children's Hospital is where the NICU is. And evidently, which I did not know, they specialize in micro preemie babies, which are babies that are born like, they have a baby there that was born at 22 weeks of age, or 22 weeks of gestation.
Wow.
So yeah, which for those that don't know, 40 weeks is a full-term baby. 22 weeks, they're like, oh my gosh, the smallest babies you've ever seen. And there were a bunch of them. Like,
wow.
It was so intense, dude. I'm telling you, like, both of the babies on either side of Finn were like, one was so like, they can't, oh my gosh, it was just so intense. They're in these like pods basically to maintain their temperature. They're on the ventilators because they can't breathe on their own. IVs, cords, all these monitors. Like, oh my gosh, you get desensitized to beeping because there's just beeping around you constantly of monitoring all these different babies. All the different issues we got. So the first room we were in was like the intense care. And then after, like when he was there and didn't need the oxygen anymore, they moved him to like the lesser care. But even then, there was like a baby across the hallway that had like a catheter in, like just like it was so intense with all these issues of all these babies. And it was like, yes, we could be upset over what's going on with ours, or we could just be really grateful that like it's not worse than this. And also walking around the hospital really gave us that perspective. I remember the second night we were there, we stayed until almost midnight at the hospital before we left. And apparently we were like the talk of the unit because I guess people don't really stay there that late. We were there so late, just hanging out with the baby. And when we left, there was like the hospital was basically empty, but there was one woman in a chair and like in a waiting area that we passed by, just like bawling on the phone. And you could hear her saying something along the lines of like, they found more mass or like a bigger mass and they're trying to get it out and blah, blah, blah. Like you could tell that whoever she was talking about was actively in surgery, actively having issues going on. Obviously they came out to update her during the surgery because she was talking like it was still going on. And it was just like, man, like so much shit can go wrong. And like, we're not there right now. Like it's scary, but like things are pretty stable. We just had to get through it.
Yeah.
And it just really changed our perspective as far as like how to handle the situation. Like it could be worse. And I don't like necessarily comparing people's situations to other people's situations because like it doesn't negate what you're going through, but acknowledging that it could be worse. And sometimes you are living the worst case scenario. And I feel horribly for you because, you know, it will be all of our fate at some point or another to have to go through that sort of thing, like the hard scenario. But most of the time, you're not in the worst case scenario. And so it was like quite a perspective change of like, I don't know, like things could be so much worse. Like it's okay. It's going to be okay. It is okay now. Just like digesting information as you get it and not jumping to conclusions of worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
And just riding it out. And like Troy had a moment too where he was in the elevator with a surgeon at one point in time getting snacks for us or getting coffee in the morning or something like that. Because he was walking around a lot. I was not able to walk the first couple of days. He was wheeling me around the hospital in a wheelchair. But in any case, so he got in the elevator with a surgeon, and the surgeon says to him, like, how's it going? And Troy was like, can't complain. And the surgeon said something like, yep, you're upright in an elevator. I'd say you're doing pretty good. And then it was just small chit chat, but he said something along the lines of, you know, we're all going to end up here eventually. And kind of like to appreciate it while you're not there. But it was like, dang, that hit real hard. Like we all end up there in that hospital, not that hospital, but you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like no one gets out alive kind of thing. And it's like, as bleak as that sounds, like we really do need to appreciate it when we're not in that scenario. Like make the most of the time we're not there. And that's so like far off in the distant future, or like, you know, hopefully anyway. But I don't know. Troy always says to me, because I'm a super anxious person, he says, like, you're living with one foot in the grave. You really got to stop doing that. It's like, you're totally right. And this experience kind of was, I don't know, eye-opening to that. Like to just let go of things, stop trying to control things, stop freaking out about stuff that hasn't come to fruition yet. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was my huge perspective, like, shift, I guess, after this whole experience. It was that. So that's what I wanted to bring to the table today, was just, you know, stop for like, just, you know, you're okay right now, and let's focus on that and not all the what ifs.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, there are people in worse situations. We may think it's worse for us at that time, and it probably is, but
Mhm.
we have to think about, like, we're getting through it step at a
Mhm.
time. There's people that maybe aren't or can't. So
Yeah.
that may sound kind of like messed up, but you have to worry about yourself and your own situation too.
Yeah, that's very true.
Mhm.
Yep, if you start loading yourself in your mind with all the what ifs or like, "Oh, what about these people?" or "What about this,
Yeah.
that, and the other?" Like, you're just gonna get overwhelmed and burn yourself out. It just and it makes no sense. It doesn't change the scenario anyway.
Right.
Whatever your what if is, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. There's no point in dwelling on it when it's not even a certainty anyway. So,
Yeah.
yeah, live in the moment. Stop, you know, freaking out about the what ifs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it may be hard, but you know, try not to worry. Like, I always say, people always say, like, worry is like, sitting in a rocking chair. You're not getting anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
can see that.
yeah, it's not, I mean, it's hard, obviously, not to worry, but
Mhm.
worrying about something that didn't happen or isn't happening, it's only hurting yourself.
Yep. What is that phrase about like worrying takes away the joy or what is there's a freaking phrase that's perfect for this situation, but I can't think of what it is.
I'm not sure.
But and then it's just like, worrying now just takes away your joy now. It doesn't like take away the worry later or
Yeah,
I can't remember the phrase. If someone knows, put it in the comments. It's a good one.
something like that, right?
Something like that. But in other words, like worrying now does not change the outcome in a nutshell. It just
Yeah.
steals your joy now
Hmm.
and your joy later if it comes to fruition. You don't
Yeah.
have that like moment of joy. It's very common in like I guess the like miscarriage community for people that are worried about having miscarriages or something like that. It's like you can worry about it, but worrying isn't going to change the outcome. Like celebrate it while you have it, like while you're pregnant or whatever, and worry about the what ifs later because I don't know, it's just like a common worry when you're pregnant. That's my most recent experience, so I guess that's why I'm relating it to that. But
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah, so that was my perspective shift. And meanwhile, while I'm home recovering and dealing with baby and all that stuff, Kristen goes and has herself a joy vacation at a freaking lake house full of delicious drinks and did you go swimming there too?
No, I don't swim in lakes. If
You
I
sound like
can't.
Troy. Troy's not. He's like, if I can't see through the water, I'm not going in it.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I think summer camp when I was a kid ruined that for me
Oh
because
no.
we had like swim, like we had it was almost kind of like school where you had different like periods of different
Mhm.
activities and stuff, and
Yeah.
one was swimming, and the instructor like made you get in the lake no matter what. Like he didn't care if you had a stomach ache, if you didn't feel like it, if you were cold, like if the water was cold, it didn't matter. You had to go.
Oh
So
no.
being forced to swim in the lake and learn like strokes and stuff, like I think kind of ruined it for me.
Yeah, I don't
And
blame
then,
you.
quick
Ugh.
side story, and then we had this group of girls who would dive down to the bottom of the lake and pull up like handfuls of stuff. And like whatever they can grab, they would just go down and grab and pull it up and then, be like this as they're treading water. And I'm like, "Bleh," like gross. Why would you do that? And then they just like released everything that was like there, and
Yeah.
now it's in the water and I have to swim in it. Like,
Yeah. Oh, gross. Like lake muck. Now you have
yes,
to put your body
exactly.
through it. Gross.
No. And
But
then anything
okay,
that
well,
would touch your feet when you're swimming or something, no, no.
I mean, like I said, Troy has the exact same feeling about all that. So it's pretty hilarious to me that that is also your sentiment on swimming in the lake.
But
Okay, well then tell me what you did do at the lake house and yeah, how did it change your perspective on life?
yes. So again, actually tying into like kind of what you said about like a worst case scenario, or people may have worse situations than you, stuff like that, until I kind of embrace what you have type of deal. I didn't really think with my business. First, let me just, in case anyone doesn't know, it was a business retreat. So I went to kind of learn more of like how to have a business, like the systems and processes of things, you know, not really physically like selling things. So I thought I pretty much had things, you know, working out. I'm making
Yeah.
money. It's a full-time income, you know. And then I go to this retreat and I'm like, wow, maybe I really don't know like what I'm
Yeah.
doing. Because honestly, I think my business on the back end, like computer wise, you know, systems, processes, programs, all other stuff is very primitive. I am not good at technology. I work out of notebooks. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have like a database with like all my customers and like tasks and reminders and do this and send this person that. You know what I mean? But I don't necessarily have a service-based business, which is what all these women have. They are coaches or, you know, selling like, well, they were mainly all coaches, like life coaches or mindset business coaches, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
One woman like coaches like mother-daughter relationships, kind of like a therapist type of thing. So it's all like services that they perform and, you know, are available to people. I was the only product-based business where I sell like a physical product. And I felt that I didn't fit in. And I was like, well, maybe I'm not going to learn things because, you know, the two women who ran it are actually two women that I pay to coach me in business and in like social media and stuff. And they were talking a lot about service-based business stuff, like, you know, how to work up their business. And I'm like, well, maybe this wasn't for me. Like I was kind of iffy about joining to begin with. And I did know a few of the women, there was 9 of us total. I did know a few of the women from my coaches groups, like our group coaching, like on Zoom and stuff. But obviously it was my first time meeting all of them in person. They're coming from all over the country. And then you're staying in a house with them for 4 days. And it's like, you
That's
know,
intimidating.
yeah, am I going to get along with them? Are there going to be arguments? Like, are there going to be people that don't want to hear certain things that are being taught to us? You know, I was the youngest one there, you know, so that was
Oh,
also
wow.
like pretty hard and intimidating. But I realized after like some of the teachings and some of like, you know, the other women talking about their business and their experience and stuff, I pretty much was the only one with my shit together, like
Interesting.
with
Yeah.
the most together, I guess you can say. So it made me feel better that I was the youngest, but kind of was the furthest along, I guess you can say. But it was definitely a perspective shift because I learned things that I didn't know I needed in my business. And that's what I wanted from this retreat. I wanted to be able to learn things that I didn't know existed that could help me run my business better. Like I mentioned, like the back end stuff, like on the computer with, it's called a CRM. It's like a customer relation manager. And where I have a database now of all my customers and I can write notes in it and keep like tabs on people where they're not just listed in PayPal. And I'm like, wait, who is this person again? Or, you know, whatever. So I can write like a little, or I can write like if they're blocked, like if they're banned from, you know, shopping with me, like stuff like that. I can set up like a task. Like what I like to do is every once in a while, every few months or every few orders, I should say, from, you know, from customers, if they're repeat customers, every couple of orders, I like to put a little free gift in their order and just say like, thank you for the continued support. And I had no way of remembering when the last time I gave them like a free gift. So now I have this system where I can write a note like, you know, 5, 10, I gave them a note, a free gift. Thank you for your continued support. And then I can set up a little reminder in 6 months, you know, if they purchased a few times since then, send them another little free thank you gift type of thing. So like there was a lot of back end stuff that I learned. Also, like I won't get too technical because I know not everyone's going to know what any of this means. But like setting up lead magnets, like how to get people on my email list, you know, because I have an email list and that's a way for me to communicate with my customers directly, you know, and reach them through an email list, through a newsletter that I have, stuff like that. Ways to provide value in that newsletter so people don't unsubscribe from it, you know, stuff like that. So there was a lot that really opened my eyes to like, wow, like I didn't even know something like that existed because I created my business myself. Like I didn't ask anybody. I didn't have help. I didn't, you know, anything I learned came from the internet. And
you did the research.
Yeah. Yep. And now working with these 2 coaches for the past year and then going to this retreat, you know, it's helping me do things for my business to make it easier for me to do my business, basically.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. And I think, so Sabrina was one of the coaches. She's mainly like the business coach. Emily does business, but she also ties in social media, which is where I'm learning how to grow my Instagram. And so if anyone wants any information about these coaches, reach out to me and I will definitely hook you up with them. You can even follow them on Instagram. It's free. They always give like free tips and stuff too. But I'm
going to have to do that. And our contact informations are always in the description box, just FYI.
Yeah, feel free to reach out, ask questions if you need to. But Sabrina was doing her training and she's like the business coach. And she, I think, kind of saw my face being a little, not really confused, but kind of like, how does this apply to me? Because like I said, everyone was service-based businesses. So she's talking about like how to get people to invest into your coaching business and stuff like that. And that doesn't really apply to me because people just buy my product. You know, they don't really like invest into me as a person. Some do, and that's great. But some just say, oh, that's a pretty purse. I'm going to buy that and done.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, well, you know, how am I going to do this? Because then with every training that they did like an actionable piece of work. So like whatever they trained on, they would then give you like homework to do right then and there for your business, which I thought was cool because it wasn't like you were just learning stuff, writing it down in a notebook. Okay, training's over, close the notebook, and then you forget about it and move on with your day, right? So they were teaching you something and then they made you do it. So when she was making us do the homework, I was like, well, crap, I don't really know how to apply this to my business. So she actually came over to me because I guess maybe she saw it in my face and maybe I was like hesitating, and she came over and she sat next to me and she talked to me for probably about a half an hour and worked with me on how that training, her training, could apply to my business. And we came up with like a whole like thing together. And that was freaking awesome. Like she didn't just leave me hanging, you know, and say, oh, too bad, so sad. You know, she sensed it, sat down next to me and worked with me together on it. So that was really cool.
Yeah. That's invaluable right there to have that one-on-one hands-on coaching.
Yeah. So that right there made it all worth it, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did work on a lot of things that I could implement into my business to make money without me physically trying to make the sales, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a huge perspective shift. And I'm so glad I went, and everyone got along. And, you know, there was no arguments. If there was a disagreement, they heard the person, they understood where they were coming from, and they kind of like explained like why or why not. So it was awesome that like all these women from all different parts of the country, ages 40 to 65, can all get along and live in one house for 4 days. We all cooked together. We all made healthy meals because like one of the things the coaches were saying is like, if you should be eating well so that your business can work well. Like, you feed your body, you feed your business, you eat well, you treat your body well, and maybe do some exercises, eat healthy, then your business will reflect that,
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a whole mind, body, business like type of thing.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
totally amazing perspective. Awesome. And actually they offered us like a continuing education type package of just for our group to do like a continuing coaching for the next 3 months to make sure that we are implementing things into our business and growing. And I signed up right away. It was like a fraction of the cost of their normal coaching. And I can't wait to keep going. And I can't wait to implement these things. And not a lot of like, I don't really think people will see it on like in my videos and stuff like that. It's not really going to be like things that people are going to be seeing. It's a lot of like back end stuff that I'm going to be working on to make things easier for me. In my
business. To make things more efficient. And yeah.
Exactly.
Sure. Well, I mean, people may see it in your attitude or in the frequency of your videos or the quality of your videos, because once you can streamline on the back end, you can put more effort into, what people are seeing.
Exactly.
So, yeah. That's awesome. Not to like turn this on business, but man, that's that like the database and the tool, I can see that being so invaluable, because especially in what you do, you can make notes like Susie Q likes green purses, like green Coach purses, like be on the lookout for that for this customer, or
right.
like, Carly Q, calling her out, or size 8 rings and loves natural stones, or like, whatever kind of notes you want to make to keep your customers. And also I was reading too, I listen to a lot of like YouTube business podcasts, which is hilarious to me because I implement like nothing, but it's like I have this knowledge because in my mind, I'm like, one day I may need to rely on my YouTube channel as an income source.
Yeah.
Like that's always, I just like to keep my foot in the door in case I have to go full bore with it at some point in time.
Yeah.
And so I listen to a lot of like developing your channel podcasts or business end of thing. And they're saying like what I've heard more than one time is the email list is like your biggest asset is an email list, because it keeps everybody apprised of what you're doing, keeps buyers aware of upcoming sales, for example. But also if anything happens, because as I'm sure you know, sometimes your channel can be shut down, like for a mistake or something. You don't even know why. And if you're just cut off from everybody, like, what are you going to do? But if you have that email list, you can keep all those people like, hey, something weird happened with my channel. I'm not sure what's going on, but until it gets sorted, I've set up this temporary channel under this name, and like, we'll continue operating over here, or whatever. Or like, you can have like, oh gosh, come here. Come on.
Luna!
She's so insane. You can have like, secret customer sales or something like that, where your loyal customers on your email list have an advantage, or they know these videos are coming out first. Good grief, who let you downstairs? Who let you down? Oh, okay.
Sounds like a little gremlin.
I know. She's disgusting sounding, I'm sure. Anyway, she smells like she's been cooking herself outside. She'll go like lay in the sun and just smells totally
like Fritos.
When she comes back. Yes, she has the sun-baked stale Dorito smell going on right now. Anyway,
but yes,
email lists are king. That's like your biggest asset. Yeah. Is that what they were saying, or did they make that point about like email lists are so important?
Right. 100%. Because all of these women are online businesses. They find their clients online. A lot of them coach their clients online. Of course, some do like in person, but they're saying like, parts of the internet like YouTube, Instagram. I mean, look what almost happened to TikTok. They can get shut down.
Yep.
And if you don't have another way to contact your clients or your customers, then you can be really screwed. So, like you said, you can contact them through there. If something happens, here's where I'm going to be for the meantime, whatever. So totally 100%. And it's not really hard to get people on your email list. It's harder to keep them because you don't want to like annoy them, send too many emails, do something to make them unsubscribe. So they were teaching us like, how to provide value in the emails and like, frequency of them and stuff like that. So yeah, it's super important. It's not easy because again, that whole email list platform, like you have to know like how to work the platform. You have to know how to create like email sequences that are automatic. And so you don't have to physically like do it yourself. Like I do with my newsletters right now. Like I physically like send everything myself.
Yeah.
So it's, it's hard for me because I am not tech savvy at all. So a lot of what's going to be happening in the continuing education little coaching program in the next 3 months is they're going to go over like how to physically set up like the email and doing things on automation and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess that's what it is. If you're going to be running any business, there's that part of you that has to always be willing to learn new stuff to keep up with the changing times, as they say.
Yeah. And to not have to do everything yourself. And if you don't want to, or if you're not ready to hire employees, like I work out of my house, where is an employee going to be like?
Yeah.
So I have to do everything myself.
Yep.
So,
well, kudos to you for putting yourself out there and going on a trip like where you basically don't know anybody. That's intimidating, but I'm glad that it was worth it and that you had a good time and that perspective change that you needed.
Oh yeah.
To like progress in your, not be stagnant in your business.
Yeah. Cause I mean, it's not something that was cheap. So I was really nervous, but since I have been working with these two coaches for the past year already, I kind of felt like, comfortable with it and, reassured that they were going to teach me things and it's not going to be a waste of time or money.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. I'm glad that it worked out for sure.
Yeah. Well, awesome. All right. Well, there you have it, you guys. That was our recent experiences that were very noteworthy in our lives.
Yeah. And very different, but that's what I like because it covers like such a wide variety of things.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I really enjoy doing these podcasts with you because we have such different life experiences to, talk about and bounce off each other and get opinions on and different perspectives.
For sure.
So, all right, you guys, well, let us know in the comments what you thought of today's podcast. And also if you guys have had any experiences that have changed your perspective on anything, I'd be very interested in hearing about those. Kristen and I read all the comments. I don't always respond immediately these days, but I do read everything and I try to respond to everything. And I know Kristen does as well. So that's going to be it for this one. We'll be back hopefully in 2 weeks with another one. Yep. And until then, if you aren't done hanging out, feel free to check out another podcast on the channel. And hope to see you back here in 2 weeks. Yay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.